Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at gcnlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked. Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. We're delighted you're with us in class today. And we broadcast 2 hours from high atop the Missouri Ozark Mountains, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. through 11 a.m. Central Time. And our affiliates pick us up and broadcast us at various times during the day. So if you'd like to call in, the best time to call and get us is when we're here, and that's between 9 and 11 a.m. Central Time. And the telephone number, we'll pay for the call, 866-582-9933, 866-582-9933. I'm delighted to be broadcasting today with one of our instructors who's just a wealth of knowledge. His name is George, and he's in New Hampshire. Welcome, George.
Hi, Vincent.
You know, George and I have talked on the air, off the air, many times. And we find that we have many likes in common. We like a lot of similar things, and we've collected some of the same things or similar things. And it's interesting. We both like history, and we want to pay attention to what's happening. And so I invited George to be on with us today to talk about guns. And it seems that that's a topic that, well, is become more and more politically incorrect. As a matter of fact, Citigroup, the large banking cartel, as I see it, has banned their customers from transacting in high-capacity magazines. They've banned their customers from buying bump stocks. And they've banned transactions with their customers in the arena of guns if they are under 21 years of age. That just happened. That was announced on Top of the Hour News, but we knew about that yesterday. So that's Citibank. They're weighing in, and they're telling us what we can and can't do. Regardless of what the Constitution says, they are making their rules for their customers, and they have every right to do so. And you have every right to not participate in any of the transactions that involve Citigroup. I mean, you can do the same thing. And they're saying that no high-capacity magazines, bump stocks, or you must be over 21 to be involved in gun transactions. And you can say, you know what? I don't really like what you guys are doing, so hey, cancel my credit card. Cancel my account. You can do that. Now, with a mortgage note, it's a little different. It's a little more complicated than just, telling him to take a hike. But you can. Hey, by the way, George, I just received a call it's on the call screen from Craig Douglas in Texas, and this is breaking news. Craig, you are at a show, a preparedness show in Mesquite, Texas, right?
Yes.
And you're being harassed by the government. They are trying to extort funds from you with no justification. Is that right?
Well, yes, they're not just harassing me. They're basically harassing the entire show. And this is a pattern that I understand from the promoter. Have been going through this with the previous promoter that was in this town. And well, maybe they're super liberal or something. Who knows? But anyway, they've chosen to attack this show. And it's not just me. Anybody selling food, they're claiming has to have a permit, even if it's pre-packaged food, such as I have, like freeze-dried food, which is all properly FDA labeled, etc. And I don't sample anything. I'm just selling food. But yet the city of Mesquite, Texas, has decided that they have to have a permit, which when the man first approached me yesterday, said, yeah, the permit's $100, You can fill out the application. And then I had to stop him. I said, well, excuse me, but your website says 75. And he goes on the phone and calls somebody and says, oh, yeah, you're right, 75. And then I said, furthermore, I seem to be exempt by your own city ordinance here. Now, the state of Texas does not have they have a food establishment that have a whole section in their health laws dealing with food sales. And the city of Mesquite added on additional things for their own city. And they basically had a little racket here. Anybody selling food must get this $75 permit. But yet I found that I'm exempt through all their rules.
So what happened? Craig, did they threaten you?
Yeah, well, they're threatening me. They're trying to extort me, or else they're going to send the cops in here. They said, well, we'll call the police in and we'll have you escorted from the grounds. And
for
I'm
what?
thinking to myself, well, for selling food without getting a permit.
But you said that the ordinance says that there is no requirement. You are exempt.
Correct. And I showed that to him, and he said, well, that's not the way we see it. And I showed it. I had it on my phone at the time. Today I've got it printed up for him to look at in paper, including the police. Because frankly, if police come here and think they're going to escort me out, I can demonstrate a crime being committed against me, something called extortion, in order to continue to do the show. And maybe he would be arrested, not me. But we'll see.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Good for you. Good for you. Well, they tried to pull that nonsense on me at the Get Prepared Expo in Springfield, Missouri. And the city said that you will have a license as a merchant. Anybody selling anything shall have a license as a merchant. And they wanted me to collect the $5 from everybody that was exhibiting. And I told them absolutely not. I am not going to do it. I'm not your agent, and I'm not going to collect taxes. I'm not going to do your job. If you think that you want to do it, you'll have to come and do it. So this gal showed up at the expo and demanded to see me. So my wife was there, and this gal said, I'm from the city, and I'm here to collect taxes. I need to see Vincent. Well, I was really busy. So Mrs. Finelli came up to me, and she said, hey, there's a gal from the city who wants to see you. And I said, I'm busy. Tell her to have a seat. I'll be with her when I can. And, I'm not working for her. I'm not jumping because she's there. So you're in good company. And, Craig, I've been thrown out of 2 events by the cops because someone's called the cops on me. As a matter of fact, I told the cops that they could not attend the Get Prepared Expo in uniform. And if they wanted to come, they're welcome to, but they had to pay like everybody else.
Yeah, and I also, in reading the code further, this is really interesting. This is the city ordinance, not the state of Texas. The city ordinance is on top of the Texas rules. Basically says this article shall be liberally construed and applied to promote its underlying purpose of protecting public health. But, yeah, you'll find that certain groups are exempt, such as nonprofit organizations, and that obviously shows their intent is obviously not protecting public health. Somebody that's in nonprofit can make a serious health mistake just like anybody else did. I would really be interested in talking to an attorney on this, because even if they don't kick me out of the show, this would be a really great lawsuit. I mean, to show these people a lesson. So if anybody wants to contact me through Vincent, that'd be great. This is a really good case, I think.
Okay, so if you're an attorney, and I doubt we have any attorneys listening, but if you are one and you'd like to contact Craig Douglas, here's all you have to do. You can contact USA Prepares. You can call in at 866-582-9933. Or, Craig, we can go to your website, which is, give us your website.
How about forbiddenknowledge.info?
Forbiddenknowledge.info. And is there a way they can contact you with email?
forbiddenknowledge@yahoo.com. Makes it easy. It doesn't have to be an attorney. In fact, a paralegal might be even better.
Yeah. So if you want to make a name for yourself and you want to be involved in it would be a great case against Mesquite, Texas, be a wonderful way for us to square up with them and even out the legislation or the ordinances for taxes. It's not evenly applied if not-for-profits are exempt, right?
Yeah, and possibly that's the way we could also get around this today. I might just put all my stuff on a nonprofit here, because there's a lot of nonprofits here. Put all my stuff in their booth and be done with it. And they walk away with the tail between their legs.
Yeah. Very good. Hey, Craig, thank you so much for calling. And give us a call next week. and let us know what happened. Or if that doesn't work for you because you're traveling, call the farm, let me know, and I'll report to everybody exactly what's happening with the cartel posing as government in Mesquite, Texas. Okay?
Okay. Thanks, Vincent.
Hey, Craig, thank you so much.
Okay.
Well, George, what happened was Craig Douglas, one of our instructors, who's been at the farm, he stayed overnight here, he's been to the expos, and he travels around and he talks about radiation detection, he talks about civil defense instruments measuring radiation, what he's found, travels and lets us know what's happening in gun shows and preparedness shows, survival shows, as that's what he does full time. And he called last night and he said he can't believe it. They are trying to enforce an ordinance that is exempting him, and they're trying to extort money from him. And I thought, wow, let's talk about it on the air and give the city of Mesquite, Texas, all the credit they deserve. And that's what just happened, class. So, George, any comments before we talk about guns?
Well, like I say, I believe you have to pick your battles. And unfortunately, just because you're above board and you're doing things the right way and you're being honorable, you can't always expect the other side, especially when you're dealing with a lot of these political pseudo-government agencies or agents. Let's just say a lot of them get the job not because they earned it, not because they're not necessarily qualified, but because of their relations or the money that they've kicked in on certain campaigns. So, unfortunately, these types of people, they're used to getting their own way, and they don't mind bypassing the law and being very underhanded. And unfortunately, unless you have deep pockets or a law degree, it's like you don't want to fall into that matrix if you can help it, because it's much easier to get into it than it is to get out of it. That's my opinion, anyway.
No,
I'm not saying you don't take a stand, but I'm just saying, if you're thin on the ground, you can be set up, is what I'm saying.
You're absolutely right. And a guy called the cops on me when I attended an event, and I was accused of criminal trespass, and they were going to arrest me. Paid my $10, walked into the event. It was a preparedness event, and they decided that they wanted to build a case against me. So they said I was involved in criminal trespass. Can you imagine that? So
yeah.
It's like going to a movie, you pay, and then the cops show up and they say, hey, are you Vin Finelli? We'll be right back. Thanks for talking about your first rifle, pistol, shotgun today. George in New Hampshire is with us. So, George, we're going to be giving our opinions on what we think makes sense. What, in your opinion, makes sense for a person's first rifle? Now, this could be a young person, someone who has zero experience shooting. And what would you recommend for the first rifle? And also, do you recommend that the first firearm be a rifle rather than a pistol?
Well, I'd say normally a rifle is easier to purchase, and it has is something that it's large enough where it gives familiarity to a young person, where and it's not something that they're going to slip into their pocket that, say, could accidentally go off because they're not familiar with firearms, or could easily be lost or dropped. I'd say a .22 would be, generally speaking, the choice of generations to introduce young people to firearms.
I've got to absolutely agree on for many reasons. One, if there's an accidental discharge, the projectile is smaller. Two, the projectile doesn't travel as far, generally, as a hunting rifle cartridge. Three, the recoil is less, and it's less expensive to practice with for a young person, and recoil is less. So I absolutely agree. So I went to the internet and I looked up, what do people recommend on the internet for a first rifle? And I was kind of shocked at one of them. And I have one of these. And they recommend a Ruger brand, and Ruger's fine. but they recommend a Ruger 1022, which is a semi-automatic rifle, which means you can put a magazine of 10 rounds in it, or you can actually get a magazine of 25 or 50 rounds, and you can just squeeze the trigger, and as fast as you can squeeze the trigger, this rifle will fire. That's of concern to me for someone shooting for the first time or, new to shooting. I would like to see a bolt action, single shot for the first rifle. What are your thoughts about that? Do you agree or disagree?
Well, I agree that with a single shot, you have the economy and you're teaching control, where, in other words, they're just not going to give into that tendency to just waste ammunition, which isn't always plentiful and isn't always inexpensive, especially with the 22, as we've experienced in the previous administration, especially where the 22 ammunition virtually disappeared off the shelves and was very hard to come by when maybe before that administration there, the previous regime, with a name that I don't even care to hear again, so I won't reiterate it on your show, is that the reason I think the 22 disappeared was because they guesstimate that 45% of the households in America have firearms. And of that 45%, probably better than half have a 22. And they wanted to basically just eliminate that ammunition so it would make it more difficult to adequately train and introduce young people to the joys of shooting.
Yeah, I remember going to gun shows where you could literally buy a case of 5,000 rounds of 22 long rifle, 40 grain, round nose, plinking type ammunition for maybe $135. Actually, I remember it for $89, believe it or not. Actually, before that, it was, you could buy a box of 50 rounds for 49 cents in my lifetime. Now it's not possible. It's way, way, way more expensive than that. But you can still buy some 22 ammunition for about, I was able to buy some for, I think, $2 a box. Yeah, about $2 a box several months ago. And it works fine. Well, I'd like to talk, after this commercial break, bottom of the hour, let's talk about what's the next. After you get that bolt action and after you're using that single shot and you're not wasting cartridges and you've got some control and you're ready to move up to the next one. Is it lever action? Is it the Ruger 1022? What? Is it a pump action, bolt action with a magazine or tube? What's the way to go? We'll be right back. Class, we're fortunate to have George in New Hampshire with us. And George, we talked about that single shot, and I really, really like a single shot. My first rifle was a bolt action, 22, and I still have it. I had it from the 1960s. So what's the next move up as we graduate toward more sophistication?
Well, I would say a semi-automatic would be a good way to go. If I could just back up for a moment, though, Vincent. Almost a year ago, we had this conversation about air guns, and I will recommend that there are air guns out there that are pretty sophisticated, for around $100, give or take, and they come in 22 pellet, which is basically like just taking the head out of a 22 bullet without all the powder and the brass around it, and you can just load these 177. And you could teach very economically. It's very forgiving. It's quiet. And it doesn't have the range like a 22 can go, and I know, the better part of a mile and still be dangerous. You always have to be aware where you're shooting and what direction. You want to have a barrier behind you, some sort of a mound or a hillside where you know where it's going to stop. You just don't want to shoot indiscriminately. I know you know this, but for the audience and the young people, you want to know where your shot's going to end up. And like I said, that's a good way. to go. The next way, if I can just say one other thing too, Vincent.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people who listen who don't want to have a firearm in the house. What I will recommend is something that Dr. Rick recommended one time, is you take a squirt gun and you can mix half ammonia and half water. Water it down because you don't want to blind anyone, but if you want something, especially the ladies in the audience who might be very skittish about having a firearm around, that pointed at a person's face could sting the eyes and basically give you plenty of time to slip away and teach the perpetrator a lesson. And I'm just giving that avenue as a way out if somebody decides they don't want a firearm in the house.
But let's take it one more step. There are articles on the internet, and I'm not going to say whether I recommend this or not, but for about $5 you can get a can of wasp and hornet spray. So that if you've got some hornets that are under the eaves of your house and you can't reach it, and it's maybe 10 feet up there, 12 feet up there, this thing will shoot a stream. And some people keep those in their vehicle, a can of that, just on the seat in case they ever have wasps or hornets nearby, or maybe something else. Just read between the lines, but that's what some people do.
But there could be an awful lawsuit from that, and I will say this too. What will kill a wasp, to me, that would be a last resort type of a thing if nothing else was available, for the simple reason. Yes, it would put somebody down, but let's just say it could blind them permanently, and it has to be used responsibly. That's all I'm saying.
Absolutely, and I'm not recommending it, or I'm not either pro or con. I'm just saying that that's something that I've read that some people do. And it's inexpensive, and you probably will not be arrested for having a can of hornet spray in your car. So, things are getting really crazy out there. So it may get to the point where guns are not available, and, what do you do? I'm just saying that that's something that I've read. Okay, so the next step from that 22 single shot, or the next step starting with the pellet gun. And of course, we've had those too when I was younger. It was common. It was common to have a BB gun or a pellet gun. It seems now that we don't want to teach people how to be responsible with them. But all of our children have used pellet guns and BB guns responsibly, and graduated to the 22, and then graduated from there. So what would be the next step after that 22 single shot? Well,
then you can advance to a semi-automatic. I would recommend, again, a 22, but what would not be a bad father and son or father and daughter project to do is get one of those, while you still can, one of those AR-15. It looks optically like a standard military rifle, the M16 or the M4, they call it now. But you can get the kit. You buy the upper, it's all barreled, it has the bolt in it, everything else all fitted. You can get that online, or you can order it from some establishment, or even go into a sizable, sporting goods store that has a gun department, and I'm sure they might even have something. And then you can get that 80% lower that you've had programs on, Vincent, where you have to make a couple of drills, cuts in certain places, and with a modicum of mechanical ability, you could basically assemble for probably no more than really under $400 a semi-automatic civilian version of a military rifle that can give you hours of fun, can be used for hunting or defense where appropriate, for what game. But in other words, could give you a lot of good experience, especially down the line. You don't know, there might be a military career ahead of some young person, or it might just be something where in these days you never know, the country could be invaded sometimes, and it'd be very good to have that in your household as a citizen soldier.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I can tell you that the Guns 80 company, GUNS, the number 8, the number 0.com, has been to the Get Prepared Expo, and they taught seminars on how to build your own AR-15 rifle, as you're discussing, George. And I have a recommendation. If you plan on going that route, there is a company called CMMG, and they make a conversion bolt and a magazine to hold the 22 cartridges that will convert your standard AR-15 rifle that would shoot 223 or 5.56 cartridges. It will convert it to a 22 long rifle. And the barrel's the same. Everything's the same except you change the magazine, which just pops right in place. It's detachable anyway. And you just change the bolt from a 223 bolt or a 5.56. You put in the conversion bolt, and you can now plink away with 22s. It's not quite as accurate as a 22 rifle would be, but you can still get 2-inch groups at 50 yards very, very easily, maybe even 2-inch groups at 100 yards with one of these. And it works really well. And how much does it cost? I think I paid maybe a little over $100 for each of the conversion bolts that I bought. And I bought them in stainless. Too. Yes. Yeah, because the ammunition's less and you can plink with less noise.
Well, here's another way, too. That's an excellent suggestion. Here's another suggestion. Crossman, Crossman. It's a well-known air gun firm. They have something called that looks optically identical, same heft feel of an AR-15. It's exactly loose as a goose copy of an AR-15, with the exception that it's a break barrel, which means the barrel folds down to cock it and have the piston. It has a nitrogen piston, which is more efficient than just a spring piston. They're like around $129.95, give or take, depending on seal. But basically, they're about under $130. And they'll give you the heft, the feel, and even a little bit of the recoil with an ear pellet in 177. I have one. I've shot it. It's fun. It's practice, and it gives you the heft and feel of having a full-fledged assault rifle. And again, you could buy a tin of maybe 500 pellets of all different shapes and sizes for under $10, and actually hoovering around $5-6 standard.
Right. Great way to go. Crossman, Crossman.
I'm sorry. And the model would be MTR-77. MTR, Michael Thomas Robert 77. And it's Crossman. They're still around. But I will say, with the climate we're in now and the uncertainty of this world, people should buy something. Don't run out panic-stricken, but after this program, just think about it, start looking into it, because let's just say these kits or rifles may not always be in plentiful supply for whatever the reason.
You're absolutely right. And don't forget the ammunition for it, class, because you can have all the guns possible and no ammunition, and what are you going to do with them? So, you can reload if you can get the primers and the powder and the projectiles, and if you have enough brass. But, maybe the brass can only be reloaded 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 times, if you're careful. So the bottom line is you need to have ammunition for whatever. Whatever you're going to buy, make sure you have ammunition for it. Now, you don't have to buy it at full price. You can buy it on sale. And you can buy ammunition privately. You can go to a gun show. You can walk up to a table. You can chat with the salesperson, the seller, if you will, of the ammunition, and you can say, geez, how much are the 22 long rifles to fit my rifle? Is it the same price if I buy 10 boxes? Is it the same price if I buy a brick of 500 rounds? Is it the same price if I buy a case of 5,000 rounds? Okay. So make sure you have ammunition that will last a long time for you and your family, because I think that's something that's going to get more and more pricey, and it may disappear. So George and I are exactly on the same page with getting the equipment, the rifle, the pistol, the shotgun, and the ammunition for it. Okay, George, I wanted to share that I love the look of lever-action rifles. So Am I interested in the 22 long rifle, tube-fed, lever-action rifle? Absolutely. I love them. They're made by Henry. They're made by Winchester. They're made by Marlin. And I'll tell you, I think that the Marlin Golden 39 lever-action 22 long rifle is a fabulous, very accurate for the money rifle. And I'd love to know your opinion when we come back. The Marlin Golden 39. It's not necessarily a new rifle. It may be 30, 40 years old, but it's a fabulous rifle in my opinion. We'll be right back. Wow. I just went to gunbroker.com and looked up the Marlin Golden 39A rifle. Gosh, I can't believe how much they've gone up. I was thinking maybe $250. No. It looks like these these are about $800 now, George. Wow.
Well, you know, and I know a lot of guns. I'm realizing that too. We don't realize you and I are the same age. We're in our 60s, and it's like, remember when you used to see those old magazines when you were young, and when we were young, and we'd see the prices that our fathers and grandfathers were paying for guns, saying, "Wow, what a bargain! We missed out." Well, I guess we've gone through that time too now, where the guns we remember that were like $100, $150 have now appreciated to, and like I say, guns are good investments too. I think you'll agree with me on that, right, Ben?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking at an alternative of the Marlin 39A. So Winchester makes one called the 9422. I can't believe it. I mean, I paid maybe $225 for that, and I'm looking at starting bids on gunbroker.com, and it looks like they're going to come in around $600, you know, by the time the bidding's done. That's without shipping and handling and all the rest of it. Man, I can't believe it. But so that brings us down to Henry. Maybe for a first repeating rifle, a tube-fed 22 in a Henry, maybe that would be $300 or $400 now. I don't know. But gosh, well, I can't believe it.
For the price you're paying, you might as well as buy, like I think they've sold over 6 million Winchester 94s of all kinds, and 3030 is the popular cartridge, and that's the gun that basically, you know, is owning a ranch like you do. I mean, or a lot of hunters there put meat in the pot in deer hunting season with that 3030 or the 3030 Marlin. It really comes down to whether you like a Ford or a Chevrolet truck. You know what I mean? It's the same thing. Marlin and Winchester, the premier brands for lever actions, and the 3030 is a very common cartridge, and it's been around over 100 years, those lever actions, for good reason.
I love the lever action. I love the lever action.
Right, I'm sorry.
I'm so glad you mentioned the 3030 in a lever action, because that was one of the rifles that I was going to recommend that our class consider as the next, you know, more powerful rifle, because I don't think I would mind defending our farm with the 3030. The cartridges are they're not military. You'll probably be able to get them when you can't get the 308s or the 223s. They'll be available, I believe. And they're about $17 a box for 20 cartridges. That's in our neck of the woods. So I would suggest that you consider that either in the 150 grain or the 180 grain cartridges with that Marlin or that Winchester lever action. As a matter of fact, there's even one that Walmart would sell, and they had the Walmart version of it, and you can find those at gun shows. And heck, they are, well, last time I looked, I haven't been there in a while, but maybe $350. Is that, George, is that about right, or are they more expensive now for the 3030s?
I'm not
used.
I'll say this. What would be a good sleeper market in the 3030s is Sears and Roebuck, for many years, would buy from Winchester and Marlin and put their own brand on it. So you'd have basically exactly the same gun in a 3030, only it would say Sears on it. And I found that a lot of times, not because it's less quality, but because with Sears on it, it doesn't command as high a premium as, say, something that was marked Winchester or Marlin would have, and it would be just as good. And you could probably get that if you hunt around for probably around maybe, $250. And remember, a lot of these gun shops, and these guys need your business, and like I said, they're good to develop a rapport with a local gun shop. Like anything, it's like there's honest dealers and there's other ones who, let's just say may not really shouldn't even be in the business, but you develop a rapport with them, and they got a lot of people bringing guns in, trading guns, selling off guns. So from week to week, you never know what's coming in there, and I think you'll find prices that might be even more competitive than Gunbroker.
Oh, yeah, I'm not recommending Gunbroker. I'm saying go to the local guy, go to the gun show, and that's where you do it, and you can do it privately in many locations. George, we're going to have to do more on this topic in the coming weeks. Thank you so much. Everyone all set? Cocked, locked, hour number 2 of USA Prepares. And I'm delighted to be broadcasting this hour with my dear friend Stephen Heuer. And his company is called Synergistic Nutrition. Synergistic Nutrition. Website SGN80.com. SGN80.com. And let me give you his phone number. Now, this is his office phone number, so if you would like to arrange a consultation or you'd like to talk about some of the products that they offer, 888-988-3325. 888-988-3325. Welcome, Stephen.
Hey, Vincent, good morning. Good to have you back, and good to be back. Thank you.
It's delightful broadcasting with you, Stephen. And I want to let our class know that I've had some really serious health challenges. And Stephen has helped me. And so Stephen has consulted with me. He's made recommendations. I'm following his recommendations. And if you can hear my voice, it probably sounds a lot better than it did, a while back. And that's because I am a lot better. And I am getting better every day. So there was a time when broadcasting, just being on the air, was darn near impossible for me. I couldn't get out maybe a sentence without coughing. And I had very serious respiratory problems. And I believe it's brought to us by the other team. And a lot of people in our neck of the woods have very, very serious bronchitis, running high fevers like 102, pneumonia. It's not like I'm the only guy. It's all over our area. And Stephen has helped me with this and many, many others. So when you hear me talk about Stephen Heuer's company, Synergistic Nutrition, and his products, I endorse them. I take them. So I want you to know that that's what I do. So I'm not just talking about something that I've heard about. I'm talking about something that I've experienced. And today I wanted to talk about something that we're using called Carbon-60. Now, Stephen Heuer has this available from his company, Synergistic Nutrition, and I'm taking about 15 drops of Carbon-60 every day. And I'll tell you how I do it, and then I'd like to make sure that I'm doing it the way Stephen recommends for optimal health. So this is a black, oily liquid. Think of it like oil that you might put on, you might cook with, okay? Mixed with carbon, black carbon. It's tasteless, it's odorless, and what I do is I put 15 drops, which is half of a dropper, in a teaspoon, and I swish it around in my mouth for 90 seconds, and then I swallow it. That's what I do. Stephen, is that the way you recommend we consume C60 on a daily basis?
Well, I recommend that amount, but actually I would recommend a full dropper full.
Okay.
One time a day or twice a day if you're trying to really accelerate some healing. But putting it in the teaspoon, I don't bother. I just drop it in the mouth, and then I don't hold it in the mouth because I don't have any evidence or information that it's absorbed through the mouth. So there's, your mouth mucosa is made up of cells that have pores, and if you don't have the small enough nutrient, like if it's just glucose or if it's just free-form amino acids, those can absorb right through the mouth. Those are small enough. But anything larger than those molecules, and I think the carbon-60 is larger, it might not absorb. And, I would just go ahead and swallow it.
Okay.
And
that's easy to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Now, can you tell us what is carbon-60 or fluorine? What is that?
So carbon-60 is a combination of 60 carbon atoms all bound together in a structure that's basically it's the exact same structure as a soccer ball, the geometric shapes of the soccer ball. So this geodesic dome was popularized and made well known by Buckminster Fuller, and that he used that as a living quarters. And shapes. There's a shape science now known. We know that pyramids are able to attract cosmic energy. Excuse me, and basically concentrate that cosmic energy into the environment in which you're living. So these shapes have an ability to attract cosmic energy, this ocean of energy, God energy. And so part of the effect of carbon-60 is not only its carbon and what carbon does, but it's also its shape structure, I believe, is also basically grabbing the cosmic energy, concentrating it in itself. And so that has a therapeutic effect on the body. But this naturally exists in nature in carbon. So if it was charcoal or something like that, you're going to get small amounts of C60 in it. But the greatest deposit of it in nature is in Russia, and there's a particular rock that is concentrated in this. It's called shungite, and this particular shungite is with and in the lake called Lake Onega, and it's been known over there for generations that sick people can drink this water full of shungite, which is C60, and they get well. Various diseases go away. So the Russians have a high reverence for this particular mineral, shungite, such that way back in history there was a war that I guess Peter the Great led, and he required his soldiers to carry a chunk of the rock in their backpack, and they won that war, and they attribute winning that war to the magical powers of this rock. So it's been known for a long time, but only recently has studies been done. And so a Dr. Fatih, I think it is, he basically took C60, put it in olive oil, and fed it to a group of rats, or mice actually. And there were 3 groups of mice. So you have to have the control group that just gets the or the mouse chow and the water and nothing added. And then the second group got the mouse chow, water, and olive oil. And the third group got the mouse chow, water, olive oil with C60. And he only gave it to him like 3 days a week, so it wasn't even in the diet every day. And as a result, at the end of the study, and the mice were bred to live no more than 24 months. So at the end of the study, they looked at the results, and the results were pretty fantastic. You had mice, the first group of mice lived maximum of 35 to 58 months, and the second group of mice, 18 to 38 months, and the second group of mice lived a maximum of 35 to 58 months, the ones that got the olive oil. And the ones that got the olive oil with the C60 lived a maximum of 59 to 66 months, which is 2.5 times their normal lifespan. So there's something more going on with this than other, you could say, antioxidants. So carbon-60 is a powerful antioxidant, so it has 20 spaces on the molecular cage of these 60 carbon atoms. It has 20 spaces where it can grab an electron. And if it can grab an electron, basically it can neutralize a free radical or grab onto a toxin, neutralize it, and carry it out of the body. So it's a very powerful way to neutralize toxins, get them out of the system, neutralize free radicals, limit inflammation, and also even kill pathogens like viruses. But more than that, it's somehow interacting with the cells. That's not been defined yet, but it's interacting with the cells in a way that seems to be making them younger. So the other thing was about this mouse study was that the mice normally develop tumors at the end of their lives. But in this case, one of the mouse was sacrificed. It was 66 months of age that he finally sacrificed the mouse, and found that it had like perfect, youthful internal organs, and of course no tumors. So this is a very powerful product to help with the body's own immunity and cellular health. And then there was another study that was done on animals like dogs and stuff, and this study was again in olive oil. So they gave 3 tablespoons of the carbon-60 and olive oil to the dog on the first day, and then on the days 2, 3, 4, and on, they gave him only 1 tablespoon. So you have to kind of saturate the system in the beginning, and then after that, it's a maintenance dose of a lower amount. And this dog was crippled in its hind leg, so it was dragging itself around, with this arthritis, crippling arthritis. And on the C60 olive oil, it ended up being able to recover completely. So over the course of several weeks, it regained full function. It was able to walk with its hind legs. It was able to run around like a puppy again, looked younger, everything. And so as a result of that study and further studies on animals, they showed that they could increase the telomere length within the cell by 32%. So that's a major longevity breakthrough. And that's, if people want to basically live a high-quality life, they want to have long telomeres, because how young the cell is and how well it functions is determined by the length of the telomere. And if you could be taking a supplement that's, say, increasing telomerase, and then that enzyme is then causing you to lengthen your telomeres, you're making your cells biologically younger. And when your cells get younger, they acquire more organelles called mitochondria, they produce more energy, and you feel a lot more vibrant. So C60 is like a major breakthrough in our ability to live high-quality lives.
Stephen, as I listen to you, I'm in total agreement with what you're saying, and I have the physical evidence that what you're saying seems right to me, and I'll tell you why. I have been working on converting our dining room downstairs in the farmhouse to a studio. And I've been spackling and sanding and taping and sawing and mitering and putting molding in. And our farmhouse has been unfinished for 13 years. We built it. And the ceiling in the dining room is about 20 feet tall. I'm not kidding. It's very, very tall. Our house is it looks like a French farmhouse. It's made out of stone, and it's unfinished. It's very strong, and it's an interesting design, but it is a lot of work, and it's so much work that we haven't finished it in 13 years. So this one room, I'm doing one major room at a time, and I still have more to go. But I've got scaffolding in the dining room, and on top of the scaffolding, because it won't reach the ceiling, I've got a ladder. And I'm climbing up and down. And so we're talking about a guy who was almost down for the count. I am now climbing up and down scaffolding. I'm going to be painting. I'm doing all kinds of work that I wasn't able to do before. I'm doing it. And I believe a lot is through your advice and counsel and your products. Stephen Heuer's with us. SGN80.com. SGN80.com. Stephen, what causes us to get older, to get more wrinkles, to slow down, to become less aware of our surroundings, to become more lethargic? And what causes aging?
It's a combination of many things. As I've talked about it before, and, the toxins in the environment, the toxins in the food, the heavy metal exposure people have had from vaccines and from dental fillings, the quality of the way crops were grown from 1945 till now. They've been grown with chemical agriculture as opposed to organic agriculture. So soils have become demineralized, and the absence of those minerals, both calcium, the major mineral, and the macro minerals and the trace minerals, are then leaving the body in a chronic state of starvation at the cellular level, because basically the body needs 64 trace minerals. This is the theory by Dr. Ulrey, and I believe, based on evidence that it's true, that you have 64 codons on the DNA. The body needs 64 minerals every single day in their monoatomic state to come in contact with the 64 codons to activate them so the cell can make protein correctly. So that's the telomerase enzyme that increases the length of the telomere that keeps the cell young. And, with every cell division, you've got a shortening of the telomere, which makes the cell biologically older. So the predominant reason for aging is a shortening of the telomere. However, there's all these other aspects that are causing that. So there's the free radical levels the body's exposed to that's causing that. So when you cook, if a person eats, say, Kentucky Fried Chicken or, French fries at McDonald's, or, any cooked vegetable oil, you're eating a lipid peroxide that is a very powerful free radical that will damage, millions of cells in your body. And, anytime you take a medication, you're taking something that's a foreign molecule that doesn't exist in nature. That's, 8% of modern pharmacology is not natural substances. They're synthetic, unnatural, so they're foreign to the body, they're a toxin to the body, and then that damages tissues as well as vital organs like the liver and the kidney. And a lot of people have been doing drugs for decades of their lives, not knowing any better. Another major one is the cooking of food. So, there's these laws of nature that, despite our ignorance of them, they still apply to us. We all have to breathe air to live. If you don't have enough oxygen, you're going to die within a few minutes, and same with water and same with food. But, animals in nature, they only eat their food. They don't have their kitchens and stoves, and so they eat what nature gives them. So it's all raw, and they suffer no degenerative diseases. Despite being full of parasites many of the time, despite being full of viruses and organisms, they're not suffering any infection or any disease process, and they live these normal full lives. They usually live 7 times their lifespan when they reach their mature age. So, and that raw food is full of the nutrients they need. So, vitamins, minerals, phytochemicals, amino acids, proteins, fats, carbohydrates. And so with the human body, it's the same thing. If you go back a few generations before chemical agriculture, before the levels of pollutants that we've been exposed to, herbicides, pesticides, and whatever, people were genetically much stronger. They could eat cooked food their whole lives and, fall asleep one night in their 90s and not wake up in, sweet departure from the earth. But nowadays, we've been, people born after 1955 are typically genetically weaker in the United States because of the lack of minerals in the soil. Prior to conception, mom and dad didn't have these nutrients, so they didn't form optimum sperm or ovum, and so conception wasn't ideal. Gestation wasn't ideal. Many people were not breastfed from 1955 forward, so a lot of people didn't get good GI tract development. So they're genetically weaker than our ancestors, and so we have to do more to have a high-quality life. And I'm an example of that. So I've basically embraced a diet that was developed by Augenis von der Planitz. So Augenis von der Planitz wrote a book called We Want to Live, and another book called The Recipe for Living Without Disease. And it's a story worthy of making a movie of. It's so amazing, his book, We Want to Live. This guy was suffering from diabetes and bone cancer, and basically had struggled so many years of his life to get well, traveled to different parts. He went to doctors, and the doctor basically diagnosed him with stomach cancer and severed the vagus nerve to his stomach, so the vomiting reflex was gone, plus the hydrochloric acid production was gone. Basically made the guy miserable from what he did, and destroyed the guy's life doing the chemo and stuff. So, Augenis' story, I'll tell you on the other side of the break.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing that. Stephen Heuer's with us. Class, and if you'd like to call his office and chat with them about products and maybe scheduling a consultation, 888-988-3325. We'll be right back. Stephen Heuer's with us. So, Stephen, you were telling us about optimal health, and you were talking about why we age. Please continue.
So the story was with regards to Augenis von der Planitz, who a little bit more about his hard life that he had when he was a kid. At age 3, the vaccination that he got gave him autism. So from 3 onwards, he was nonverbal and compromised with his ability to communicate with people. And he lived his life like this up to adulthood. And like I said, he developed a cancer of the stomach. The doctor severed the vagus nerve, gave him chemotherapy, and basically created a lot of scar tissue in his gut. And his life was very miserable. And he ended up finally realizing that doctors basically didn't know what they were doing. So he started to study nutrition, read as many books as he could on one of them. And he was being taken care of by a caretaker guy. And the caretaker guy basically said, one of the things that I think would help you is just drinking fresh raw carrot juice. And so Augenis, because he had the vagus nerve to his stomach severed in this surgery, that stops the body's ability to produce hydrochloric acid. So he was told that he could never eat any foods in their raw state because they're full of bacteria, and the bacteria would go into the body and give him an infection and kill him. So he was very afraid of this carrot juice because it was raw, and he, hated cooked carrots as a kid, so he didn't take his advice to begin with. But eventually, the guy wore him down. He tried it, and literally within like a short period of time, with the first week of drinking this carrot juice, his autism went away. He was cognitively able to speak to people normally for the first time. And so this led him on a journey to explore the different books on nutrition and apply the advice. And so he kind of became a semi-fruitarian, vegetarian, and he started to bike around the country and all the way up to Alaska at one time, trying to find Native Americans in the U.S. This was in the 60s, I believe, where they might have some advice for him on diet. And so one of these Native Americans told him that he thought he needed to eat red meat to get well, and Diogenes was a vegetarian philosophically and physically, so he didn't accept that advice. Later on, he made his way up to Alaska, and this is somebody who's still very sick and has health issues. So in Alaska, these native Inuit people basically welcomed him in, and one of the things they did while he was there is the tradition is that after they kill a caribou, is they will let it rot in the summer months for 2 weeks. And after 2 weeks, they consider it decomposed enough and ready for the celebration and to eat it. And they basically gave him some of this, and it was literally covered in mold and stuff. And he kind of didn't know what it was, but he ate it. And the next morning, he woke up, and because it was cold up there, he normally had to take like 15 minutes to get out of his sleeping bag just to get his muscles to move and get rid of the pain that he normally has. He had to warm up. But he noticed that he woke up much easier, and he didn't have the pain, and he was able to get out of the sleeping bag much faster. So this ended up, leaving a mark in his mind, planting a seed in his mind. He made his way back to Southern California where he lived and continued to suffer, and the diabetes got worse. And so he decided that he didn't want to live anymore, so he went to an Indian burial ground in Southern California deserts and had a friend build him a lean-to or some kind of an apparatus where he was protected from the elements, where he planned to fast himself on water to death. So each day of his water fast, a coyote would show up, and by the 11th day, a coyote basically came up and licked his foot and woke him up, and the coyote would walk a little ways away from him and look back, and then walk again a little bit further away from him and look back. So Diogenes realized that the coyote wanted him to follow him. So he got up and followed the coyote, and the coyote took him to a pack of coyotes where they had surrounded a rabbit, and one of the coyotes grabbed the rabbit by the nape of the neck. Another coyote came up and ripped open the guts of the rabbit, and the coyote that had the rabbit in its mouth took it up to Diogenes and laid it right on his foot, barefoot. And so he, as a kid, was told that if you eat raw rabbit, there's a bacteria in it that can kill you. So he thought this was nature trying to help him kill himself, and that if he ate it, he'd die quicker. So he went back to his resting quarters and took a bite of this rabbit and chewed it up and swallowed it, and it came right back up. It was like, disgusting to him at the time. So then he got up his nerve because as a kid he was basically beaten if he didn't eat his peas and vegetables on his plate, so he would be forced himself to eat this rabbit. So he after he got through about 50% of what he was eating, it started to taste good, he was enjoying it, and he got about 3 pounds of this rabbit meat down. He went back to his lean-to living quarters and felt better and better and better. And, when you are having a near-death experience, you can feel really good. So he thought that he was dying, but he slept really well that night, got up the next morning feeling really good. And after 3 days of feeling really good, he decided that what the Native American had told him about eating meat, what he experienced up in Alaska with the Inuits eating this fermented caribou meat, was correct, and that eating raw meat might be the answer. So he proceeded to kill what was in the desert to get some strength back. So he grabbed a rattlesnake, and he'd swing it over his head, because the Native Americans had taught him that you could swing a rattlesnake over your head and then whip it, and its head will just snap off. So he did that, and he successfully got the head to come off and ate the rattlesnake meat. He caught tarantulas and ate the guts of the tarantulas, and basically got strength up to get out of the desert, and made his way to civilization. And there were some farmers in the area where he was, so he asked the one farmer to allow him to work for him in exchange for food. So Diogenes was doing that for 6 months, and he was eating fresh dairy, raw chicken eggs, and he went from 96 pounds to 156 pounds and was thriving in health. His bone cancer and his diabetes went away. And he went on to, help and counsel, thousands of other people with his message, and wrote a book called We Want to Live, in which he not only tells his story, he tells a story of how his son was in a severe car accident and suffered a coma in the hospital and was expected to die. And so Augenis flies out because the son was living with the mother. They weren't together. So Augenis was in California and his son was in Ohio. So he flew out to Cincinnati and behind the scenes in the hospital started to feed his son hamburger with fresh raw hamburger with butter and honey, or fish with butter and honey, fresh raw fish. And in 24 hours, the kid came out of the coma. And then over the course of 7 days of being there, Augenis was feeding him these raw foods behind everybody's back. And every time the kid would eat some of this food, there would be so much phlegm that Augenis would have to vacuum suction the throat of all the phlegm. And so that's what's happening is when you're very damaged and injured and you're eating raw foods, your body will take the dead tissue and cause it to come out more quickly. And so it was coming out through the respiratory system in the form of mucus. And over the course of 7 days, Augenis basically resurrected this boy, and this boy was a teenager. He was ambulatory. At the end of 7 days, he was out of bed, able to walk, and not able to speak correctly and not able to walk correctly, very uncoordinated because he so damaged his nervous system. But so Augenis saw that he was out of death's door, had to go back to work, so he went back to California, and the son went back to live with mom. Doctor put the boy on Dilantin because the doctor believed that this boy was subject to seizures with his nervous system disorder and that he needed to protect him from that because if he had a seizure, he might die. So he gave him a drug to suppress his nervous system. And the boy went back to home eating mom's food, cooked food. And over 6 months, he made no progress. He kept in touch with Augenis, his father, and he made no progress. So then Augenis, after 6 months, said, you made all that progress when I was there with you. Why don't you come back out, live with me, get on the foods that you were eating before with the 1 week that I was there, and, get off the Dilantin. So the boy agreed to do that. He came out, lived with Dad, and resumed the raw diet. This is raw meat, raw milk, raw eggs, raw cheese, raw butter, raw cream, raw green vegetable juice, and got off the Dilantin. And the boy went on to make 100% recovery, totally normal. And so that story, Augenis' story, when he was a kid, he got smashed in the nose with a baseball bat. And he was on the operating table for 6 hours as the doctor glued with epoxy glue his nose back together because he had to wait for each piece of the nose that he glued back into his nose to dry before he could add the next piece. So Augenis didn't really realize what happened because he was a kid when that happened. So as an adult on this diet, his body so regenerated itself that it got to the point where this crusty material started coming out the skin of the bridge of his nose. And he didn't know what it was, so he finally took it to have it examined, and it was this epoxy glue. And so he went on to be a super healthy guy and taught a lot of other people how to be really healthy on this diet. And it's a very extreme diet by most people's standards, and most people will reject it. But here's a caveat that people need to realize. Our microbiome, the microflora of the digestive tract, are what determine what you crave and what you prefer. And so if you're raised in China on insects and other odd foods, you will develop the microflora to want and crave those things that we consider gross. And there's a story of a study that was done where this Chinese boy raised on normal organic foods and breastfed and all that stuff was basically very healthy, and he was tested to see if he would go for eating a McDonald's hamburger. So they put it in front of him, and he didn't want it. He didn't even reach for it, nothing. But then they gave him a fecal transplant from somebody who ate McDonald's and ate, I guess, junk food. So this person's stool was basically given to this boy in the form of an enema. And so you're transferring his microbes back into the gut of the boy. And now the boy was, again, at the table given another temptation to eat the McDonald's hamburger, and he wanted it, and he ate it. And so what most people don't realize is that your microflora will adjust to what you eat, and they will start to want and crave those things that you eat. So what you consider gross now might actually become delicious in the future, depending upon what you're going to eat. So it's not something that people can't do. A lot of people have done it and regained their health. In fact, Agenus worked with over 230 people with cancer that were cured on this diet. So when we talk about aging, cooked foods end up causing so much burden on the body that there's a phenomenon that's called leukocytosis. So you eat a cooked food meal, and you'll temporarily see your white blood cell count climb in your bloodstream. And then those white blood cells act as garbage collectors to clean up the damage of removing those cooked foods and contributing enzymes to digest them. And I'll continue on the other side of the break.
I just love listening to you, Stephen. You're just a wealth of information. And I've got a question for you when we come back, but please continue it right after the break. That's his website, sgn80.com, sgn80.com. Stephen, you're telling us a fascinating story about Agenus van der Plants and his book, We Want to Live, and what you've learned from it. Please continue.
So I was saying that to correlate to your original question is what we can do to prolong life in a youthful state and slow aging. It was coming back to that. It's when you cook foods, you can see the visual changes. So you cook the steak on the frying pan. It goes from a water-loving, water-rich tissue to brown tissue that's cells are being ruptured, water's being released, and now those proteins are so changed that they don't want and can't hold on to water. And the proteins have all become bent and twisted. That's why they're changing colors, the denaturing process. So your body can only use amino acids from proteins that have retained the shape that nature gave them. So of the 20 amino acids in nature, you eat your steak and your body's going to get maybe 25% of the amino acids. 75% from the cooking process has become so bent and twisted that you can't use them. So when they're in the body, they're looked at as a toxin. So your body has to expend all this energy to detoxify it. Part of that energy is to raise white blood cell counts, so the white blood cells act as like Pac-Man to carry it to elimination. They also donate their enzymes to the digestion of these molecules and to the inflammation that they cause. And so it's very much you have only a certain enzyme potential in the body. When you're younger, you have more enzymes in your body with which to deal with metabolic needs, metabolic enzymes of the cells, and also digestive enzymes. And so the more cooked food you eat, the more you deplete your enzyme bank account. And, of course, with raw foods, they have their enzymes in them, so they digest themselves readily. The other thing is that all disease has inflammation as a consequence or as a part of the picture. And when you're eating cooked foods, you're eating substances that, because of the change of their shape, they will now cause inflammation, particularly proteins and fats. You cook a protein, you cook a fat, they become very damaged. Fats become oxidized. They're very much free radicals. There's all kinds of toxins produced from dry cooking meats like acrylamides and advanced glycation end products that are toxic to the body and will deposit in the body, thus injuring the tissue, aging the cell. So the science is there that substantiates this, and another reason why colds and flus and cancers and all diseases occur is because these proteins from cooked sources, because the body can only excrete so much in 24 hours, the older you get, the more you're not able to excrete all these damaged substances in 24 hours. So, 5%, 10% stays in the system, and that builds up every day. So people have their annual cold and flu, they have their annual whatever, because they have the, you could say, petri dish material upon which the microbes feed. So this is another thing that people need to understand. This is documented by Gaston Naessens, Antoine Béchamp, Gunther Enderlein, Royal Rife, that microorganisms are nature's janitors. So they're here to digest and decompose dead, dying, toxic, or decaying tissue. So with toxins in the tissues, these damaged proteins and fats in the tissues, they will now grow and multiply, produce acids and enzymes that digest and remove these from the body to actually help you get well. That's why people are healthier on the other side of a cold or flu. It's also why more people with colds and flus that have not used antibiotics are statistically freer of cancer. People that have used antibiotics to interrupt their colds and flus end up causing these cooked food toxins to stay in the tissues, and there's a much higher incidence of cancer with people that have used antibiotics because cancer will evolve as an alternate mechanism to deal with the toxins. There's a high, if you look at the actual tissue of a tumor, it's going to be very high in pesticides, herbicides, heavy metals, toxins of all kinds. So it's actually a, you could say, protection reservoir to develop a tumor in most people's situations with cancer. So Augenis basically gave us a big gift. He lived a long, full life. Unfortunately, when he was in Taiwan, I believe it was, where he had a group of people over there basically supporting his message and trying to build up a factory or a place to do this, he got injured and died. But his message lives on in the book, We Want to Live, and the Recipe for Living Without Disease, and it's pretty phenomenal what can happen if you apply it.
Stephen, we've run out of time, and I'm just listening intently to what you're saying. Will you be able to come back with us in a couple of weeks, maybe on a Friday? Is that something that maybe you can work into your schedule?
I'd love to. Thank you for the invitation, Vincent.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it. Stephen, thank you so much for being with us. SGN80.com. SGN as in Synergistic Nutrition 80.com. Thanks so much, Stephen. I really appreciate your message.